It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. It is the Jill on Money show. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your finances. I am Jill Schlesinger, CBS News business analyst and certified financial planner. And the guy running all the things behind the scenes, sometimes in front of the scenes, is Mark Talercio. He's the executive producer. And we're delighted that you are joining us today. Really, truly. This is the program that tries to take the mystery out of your financial life. We do that by answering your questions. And isn't that neat? Any question you might have, we can do it. You might have a question maybe about what's in your personal financial life. Maybe it's about something going on in the economy. We got another report that showed that inflation was running hot, and that's going to keep happening. And what should you do with your money around that? Should you worry? Should you not worry? Do you need some context? Let us know. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Very easy to do. All right. So what else do I need to tell you? I need to tell you that this program is sponsored by Facet Wealth. Facet Wealth provides financial planning that's accessible to lots of different kinds of folks. Maybe you, for example. They do goal-based financial planning, and you get a dedicated certified financial planner. That's really important because a certified financial planner has to put your interests first. So it's conflict-free planning on a flat fee. There are no wealth or account minimums. So go check out facetwealth.com. All right. Now, what else do we need to tell you? We need to tell you that when you send us your questions, your concerns, let us know if you want to come on the air live with us. That is what Harry did. Harry is on the line from Pennsylvania, and Harry is joining us from the Sleep Number virtual studios. So what can we do for you, Harry? Tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, so I am always struggling with whether I should pay my house off early or take that money, that extra income each month, and actually put it towards investments.
Harry, what is your age?
Yep, I'm 34 and my wife is 32.
Do you both work?
We both work, yes.
How much do you earn?
We're about $185,000 a year.
Kids?
No kids.
Will have or will not have? What do you think?
We're trying to have kids. We're currently going through some fertility treatments.
I am sorry to hear that. You make a bunch of money. Are you putting money into your retirement accounts?
Yeah. So as of last year, we started doing 15% of our income. So we max out I max out my 401k. My wife works multiple jobs, so she doesn't get offered a 401k. So we max out a Roth for her.
Oh, good.
And I also max out a Roth.
Oh, that's great. So you have two Roths and you got the 19.5. So that's great. How much money do you have in an emergency reserve?
I have about 60,000 in cash. But I keep about 20,000 of that for an emergency.
What's the other 44 at this point?
We spent money on IVF treatment.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was there, but we've already kind of built back up.
Oh, good.
My wife's wanted to do things around the house, but until we kind of see what our next steps are here with our treatments, we're kind of sitting on that money until we know what to do.
Smart. How much is your house worth right now?
About 180,000.
Okay. And what is the outstanding mortgage amount and what is the mortgage interest rate?
Yep. So I owe about 58,000 left on the house. And it's an interest rate of 4.5%.
Interesting. It's a little high. Are you going to stick around in this house or what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we always talk about if this doesn't work out for us and we don't have kids, we're moving to the beach.
Nice.
But, we love our house. It's affordable. Gives us flexibility to travel and do a lot of things. So I could see us staying. We've been here for 10 years. I can see us staying probably for at least another 5 to 10 years.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's all good. And how much money would you say you've socked away between the 401ks and the Roth IRAs?
We have about a little over 300,000.
Great. You're on the right track. So the reason why this is usually a very easy question is that, I like people hanging on to their liquidity. How many years left do you have on your mortgage right now?
Right now I'm paying extra. So if I were to continue down the path, I pay an extra $700 a month or $800 a month. I would have it paid off by 2024. But
Okay.
if I just stopped, it would be 2030.
Okay, there's two things that come to mind. Number one is this IVF is an unknowable amount of money right now, right? Because,
Right.
I mean, if things work out and you don't need it anymore, fine, but you are sort of in the smart position here where you really should be keeping extra money in cash. You really should. I don't think you should take any of that 40 grand and spend it till you understand what your next steps are. Let's pretend that your wife becomes pregnant and you don't need that 40 grand. And by the way, I would stop doing the extra 800 a month. I would just stockpile cash because in my experience of friends who've done IVF, like people can spend $80,000, $100,000 out of their cash to do this. So I think that you really want to build up that cash position. And I would stop doing the extra $800 a month with a caveat that I don't think you should be investing. I just think you need to have a big stockpile of money. Okay, let's say that, again, she gets pregnant, everything's great. In that case, you have an interesting question to answer, and that is normally I would say, hey, you know what? I wouldn't pay down my debt because honestly, it's not, I really like having my money, but you've already had liquidity. And 4.5% these days, I'll tell you what, if it's like bugging you a lot, 4.5% is not cheap. It's actually on the more expensive side of mortgages, relatively speaking. It's certainly a lot more than you could get for having a big fat emergency reserve fund. It is odd for me to hear myself say that, but I wouldn't be averse to you saying like, hey, Jill, my wife's pregnant. We have $100,000 in cash. Can I pay my mortgage off? I actually would say, okay. I really would. It's very unlike me. And the reason is simply the cost of the mortgage, and there's not a lot left, okay? And the idea that you'd stick around in this house. But the other side of that is what's probably smarter, and again, this will not make you feel emotionally better, but what is probably smarter is to invest for the next 10 years, probably do better than getting that 4.5% return, have the access to your money, but I kind of feel like it depends on like what's going to emotionally drive you crazy. If it's just going to feel better to get rid of that mortgage once you have a kid, once things are rocking and rolling, I'm okay with it. I really am. I think if it were a 3% mortgage, I'd feel differently. But a 4.5% mortgage, I don't know. Like I could be okay with that being done by 2024, even, in the next couple of years if you want to put a chunk down. But it does totally depend on number one, how much you need to spend on that IVF. Number two, whether your wife's going to be able to work as much after she has a kid. Maybe you don't want to put the money down on that mortgage because you want to have more money in cash because her cash flow is going to drop down because she's going to be staying home with the kid. I don't know. But what I do know is having access to your money in the next year or so is vitally important for you guys. Okay, we'll get back to more of your questions during the break. Go to our website, jillonmoney.com. And while you're there, sign up for the free weekly newsletter. Mark does a great job with that, so check it out. jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. I am Jill Schlesinger, and we are trying to talk about money and not make it scary or boring. It's kind of fun, And if you want to hear more fun from us, me and Mark, why don't you check out our sister podcast? It's called Eye on Money, and you can get it wherever you get podcasts, or just go to our website. You'll find it right there. Easy to do. Now, Mark, you notice we have a new sponsor, this Sleep Number. How's your sleep patterns? Pretty good or not so good? Oh, Mark and his partner are considering getting a new mattress. I mean, maybe you want to check out the new sponsor, Sleep Number. I don't know. Check it out. Mark and I had to come up with their tagline because the stooges over in the sales department didn't send us any copy. We now found out by going to the Sleep Number website that they do smart, effortless comfort. I like that. All right, let's get to a caller. It's James in the Bay Area. James, welcome to the program. What can we do for you?
Thanks, Jill, for taking my call. This is a fantastic experience. I really appreciate it. I've got a bunch of questions that have to do with, of course, retirement. I'm in the process of turning a corner, so I thought I would check in with you.
Great.
The basic questions are basically, am I on track to have the option to retire at the age of 62? That's not something that's set in stone, but I want to have the option. I'm a little concerned that I've got this tax liability time bomb that's set to go off in retirement, like I think I do. What can be done about it? Should I do some conversions, et cetera, and we can get into the details a bit later. And finally, where should I pull my money from to live from the age of 62 to 70?
Let's get to the actual data. James, how old are you?
I'm 59 and a half.
Only people who know about retirement will actually say 59 and a half, but
Yes.
Congratulations. Are you married?
Yes, I am.
And is your spouse the same age, older, younger?
She's 59, so she's
Okay.
a full 4 months younger.
Oh, well, younger
Yeah.
woman, cradle
Yes.
robber. And how much do you earn, James?
I earn $260 to $290, depending on bonus, per year.
And what about her?
She doesn't work outside the house.
Okay, got it. Kids?
2, but they're grown and launched.
Yes. Love
Yes.
that. So
no
happy.
student debt on that part. Also, I'm very proud of that.
God, that's great. When you retire, are you working in a place that provides a pension plan?
No, there is no
Okay.
pension.
And it sounds from what you're describing that you would plan to claim Social Security at age 70, right?
That's the goal, yes.
Okay, got it. All right, now let's talk about what you got. First of all, tell me the easy stuff, like the house. You have a house in the Bay Area. It must be worth a lot of money. How much?
Yes, it is worth $1.8 million.
God.
Yes.
What was it worth 10 years ago? Give me that. I just got to know.
Oh, gosh. I'm not sure I was following it 10 years ago. I've been in the house for 20 years, so I can tell you 20 years ago.
Okay, 20 years ago. What did you buy it for?
$550.
Isn't that something, Mark? Takes your breath away. What's the outstanding mortgage on that, James?
$300.
The rate?
I'm in the process of a refinance from 3 5/8 down to 3 1/8.
Are you going to refi for 20 years, 15 years? What?
I'm doing the 30 years.
Okay, 30 years. Okay, good. Okay, now let's get into the assets. Let's start with non-qualified, also known as non-retirement. What's your emergency reserve fund look like?
I've got about 12 months worth of cash on hand for emergency reserve, and that's I've allocated myself a very generous $10,000 a month to live off of, so that's about $120K.
Okay. What about other non-retirement accounts?
I do have a brokerage account through Vanguard, and that is up to about $2.3 million.
Woo! All
Yeah.
right.
I was hoping that would be your response.
Yeah, that's sweet. Use index funds, stocks. What do you use in there?
Yeah, it's actually probably over diversified even, but I do have plenty of index funds in stocks, various categories of that, and also some bond funds too.
Okay, good. Perfect. Okay. Anything else? Any company stock that's unvested or that's due to vest or anything like that you will be looking at in the next few years?
Yeah, there's on the order of about $200,000, $300,000 worth of company stock due to vest over the course of probably 3 to 4 years. So that may take me out past retirement. I may have to walk away from some of that.
All right, that's fine. Okay, now is that it for non-retirement accounts?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
let's talk retirement. What do you have?
Well, there I've got $950K in a 401K.
Okay.
Traditional.
What about for your wife? Does she have any IRA? Did she do any spousal stuff, or did you always make too much money?
Yeah, I was typically up there.
Okay. And any other assets in retirement?
No, that I think is about the entirety of it right there.
Okay. All right. So when you said the tax liability from the time bomb, very Ed Slott of you to use that terminology. Are you talking about the 950 in the 401k?
I'm talking about that and also some long-term capital gains over in the brokerage account.
When you look at your Social Security benefit at age 70, what is it that it is estimating for you?
It's estimating $4,100 per month.
Plus half of that for your wife, right?
I hadn't thought about that part. I'm not well versed in Social Security.
Yes. You forgot about her $2,000, baby. She gets half of yours. Yes.
In addition to that $4,100?
Yeah. Pretty good, right?
Yes.
You're in. So basically, as a non-working spouse, you get to claim half of your working spouse's benefit. So the idea here is that because you plan on delaying it, that delay builds up that amount to $4,100, right? Because if we looked at your full retirement age, it would be in the threes. But as you know, waiting till 70, you get that extra 8% a year, and boom, you're at $4,100. But what you don't realize, and which many people do actually forget, is that your spouse gets half of your benefit. So instead of $4,100 a month, you will actually get more like $6,150 a month because that's your benefit, and half of your benefit is what she can claim. Put it together, now you got $6,100. Pretty good, right?
Oh, that would be excellent. Now, one question with that, though, is it truly half of my benefit that she gets? Because she has not been working for the bulk of this time. So she hasn't built her own benefit. You
could say zero. She could have made $0 in her entire life, and she still gets half of your benefit.
Okay. Well, why does this seem like the world's closest held secret here?
You know what? Until you get closer to those ages of claiming, sorry, those are my dogs. Until you get close to actually contemplating retirement, I think it's tough because you don't really focus on that. But yeah, non-working spouse will get half of your benefit that you get to claim, which is pretty awesome, right?
Very awesome.
Okay, very good.
By the way, with the dogs, I can relate. I hope you saw the picture I sent in.
Of course, I love it. And now I'm just looking at that dog. Is that a mix of some sort of terrier and something else?
We think she's a Springer Spaniel of some sort, but that's just what we've been told. She was a rescue dog, so we don't have any.
She's beautiful.
Yeah.
She's beautiful. She's great. So that's number one. So are you on track for 62? Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt. You can do this. Okay. I presume that what you're doing right now anyway is you're maxing out your retirement. So you're getting $26,000 a year into your retirement. That's number one. So even if you just did that for a couple more years, that gets you up over your $1 million. And you're also saving money in your non-retirement assets. Okay. So two parts of this. One is that we'll have to see what the rules are when you turn 62, right? And if you really do decide to retire, because it may make sense for you to start converting that when you retire, converting that 401k into a Roth. But it really depends on where tax rates are. Okay, we'll get back to finish up our question and answer period with James in just a second. During the break, why don't you send us an email with your financial question? Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. Let's get right back into it with James from the Bay Area so we can conclude his financial planning, at least in terms of radio financial planning. Here's the rest of our conversation with James. The reason why I think it could be interesting for you is that instead of being in, let's call it the 24% tax bracket, you could actually find yourselves in the 22% tax bracket. And so it might make sense to take some of that 401k when you're retiring. We really have to judge this based on where tax rates are then, because you can't do anything with this right now. You could conceivably take the money, convert it at this lower tax rate, and you control your tax destiny at that point. Let's talk about the brokerage account. You know, the good news is you got a lot of gains. And I presume you don't have any losses that are in there. Are you harvesting any losses right now?
No,
Are there any losses that you know of?
not anymore.
Oh my gosh.
I did the big shift way back in 2008 at the bottom, I think it was,
Uh-huh.
into my current allocation. And so ever since then, it's all been upside.
I mean, you got to pay your taxes. What can I tell you? I mean, that's the issue. So what I would say is this. I mean, you can take some of these gains a little bit along the way if you want to limit this. So for example, right now, your long-term capital gains rate is 15%. It's not terrible.
No.
And maybe you want to start to cycle out of some of these holdings, not a lot, but some of your holdings in the next year or two to get yourself the cash, because you're going to need the money from this account. This is the account you're going to pull from age 62 to 70, your brokerage account. And so what that means is you're going to need that $10,000 a month from this account. Okay? You're going to need to have the money that's in this account pay for some of your needs. What I think is going to be important is that I think you probably want to know that you have a couple of years that's in cash before you actually step down. My other sense for you is that, just talking to you for 2 seconds, is that now that I've told you you can easily retire at age 62, is that you may not want to. And I think that your big struggle is going to be, how am I going to leave this money on the table, this company stock? It's not enough money that would ever keep me in a job I don't like. But if you're very happy and you can still keep working and you're sort of flourishing, at whatever point you decide to stop working, don't worry. Leave the money on the table. Who cares? How long have you been at this company?
25 years.
I mean, it could be that you sort of negotiate out with them, that you give them a long runway. Hey, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But gee, I really would like to be able to hold on to my stock. How can I do that? And you can negotiate. That's one of those things that you may be able to negotiate. Maybe you do some contract work. Maybe you go part-time. I don't know if they allow that, but it depends on the organization. I wouldn't get myself too crazy because, again, 15% tax bracket's pretty low. But I think the more important issue is that you're going to have some time. I don't know. Is your organization the type of organization that would allow you to do part-time work or not?
I think that's a possibility.
Because I'm wondering, this is interesting. So if you were to do part-time and your tax rate went to, instead of 12, maybe you went down to 22%. I would still start thinking about converting some of the money, because maybe, or taking some of the capital gains. I really would. I just think that there's a lot of opportunity here. You just want to harvest the gains with enough time that you know you've got the money safely set aside and limit the hit. I mean, if you're limiting the hit to a 15% long-term capital gains and you are earning just enough to stay in, say, 22% and converting a little bit of money along the way, I think that's a pretty good game plan. I really do.
That's interesting. I'm not the first that has spoken with you about this idea of doing conversions a little bit at a time to remain below a certain tax bracket. About where do you think is that cutoff where it becomes desirable to do so, but then the moment you breach into, say, the 32% bracket?
Yes, I think for you, it would be tough for me to think that you would want to go above 24%, right? So right now, the married filing jointly, 24% is up to 330. You said that you guys make, 290-ish, let's say.
Yeah, but the RUs push me past that all the time right now.
Okay. So I think if you could if you can convert at 24%, I would love that. That would be great. Look, you might like working part-time. You might say 62 to 65 and I work part-time and I get like my whole house in order. And by the time I'm at my full retirement age, 65, 66, I'm done. It's sweet. I like that idea. Personally, I would have a little bit more money in cash coming into my 62 time horizon instead of just 1 year. I'd probably have 2 years in the bank. So it would probably be more like 250. Some of that you won't need it all, but it'll be good to have a little extra cash cushion if you do start converting at that time. And then also, I don't know where tax rates are going, right? Right now, for someone like you, even if you make $350,000 with the RSUs vesting, right? You're still in a 15% long-term capital gains rate. And I think that's a damn good rate to start taking some gains off the table.
Yeah, that part's good. I've always been curious. Back in 2008, we worked with a certified financial planner to develop this plan. He did a good job of distributing my allocation across all accounts, retirement, non-retirement, et cetera. But what was interesting is that he put most of the bond and even some short-term cash reserves into the 401k portion, and the stock portion is all in the non-retirement account. And I'm curious, is that a reasonable allocation? I've been this way for obviously about 13 years now, and it's what's done is done. But does that seem odd?
No, it's not odd. It's a very specific belief system, which is, and there are a lot of advisors who do this. Okay, so it's very interesting. It is basically premised on the idea that bonds and bond funds distribute income. Income is taxable at your ordinary tax bracket. So why not push income producing assets into retirement accounts versus in non-retirement accounts? You're in a high tax bracket. You were probably, when they were doing this, you were in a higher tax bracket, which is funny. But, if you're now in let's say you're in the 24% tax bracket, it's a little bit less of a problem. But I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better. I always get this sort of pit in my stomach feeling when I start hearing about people putting large growth funds into their retirement accounts and thinking, well, it feels like I'm sort of oddly allocated across.
No, it
Okay.
is not. It is not that. Absolutely not. Don't worry about that. Okay.
Terrific.
All right.
That's a big relief.
Okay, do you want to come on the air with us like James? All you need is to send us your question. Just send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com, or if you're on the website, just click the contact button. So jillonmoney.com, the contact button, it's in the upper right-hand corner. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that attempts to help coach you through your financial issues, your personal financial issues, but we love to talk about any question that's on your mind. Send us your emails at askjill@jillonmoney.com. That's askjill@jillonmoney.com. So I was on vacation the week following Independence Day. Mark, did you take any time off that week or not? And that's it? Yeah, I mean, you didn't work on Monday, Independence Day, did you? Oh my God, the guy's always editing. I mean, the poor man has to live with my voice in his head constantly. It is reverb. It must be terrible for you. And I even get sick of my own voice because I listen. So I listen to the show and I listen to our two podcasts. We have two podcasts. One is called Jill on Money and one is called Eye on Money. And you can just check it out. Go to our website, jillonmoney.com, and Mark has great links up there. Sometimes I get a kick out of myself. Sometimes I don't. And Mark will tell you I'm the hardest on myself of anybody. Because when I make a mistake, whether it's on television or radio, he knows I get really, I'm tough. I'm a tough critic. Oh, it does linger, but not for too long. Haven't I gotten a little bit better? I think I'm a little better. I don't think I'm quite as nuts as I used to be. I used to be insane. Really was. One time I dropped a bad word on TV, not like it live, but I mouthed it and I got into big trouble because something was happening. And that took me a very long time to get over. That was bad. Anyway, let us answer your questions. Send us your emails. Ask Jill@jillonmoney.com. Okay. This is from Ashton, who's 33, single, living in New York City. And Ashton works as a communications professional. And so here's the note. My father recently passed away this year. He left everything to me. I was an only child and my parents were divorced. This includes $70,000 in cash, $230,000 in an annuity, and a house that's worth $400,000 to $425,000. He says, despite going through the motions of the grieving process, I recently accomplished my goals of making six figures before the age of 35 and contributing 15% towards retirement. I'm renting in New York, and other than a car payment and monthly expenses, I have no debt. I'd like to begin investing part of the inheritance into mutual funds, indexes, and exchange traded funds. I would love to know your opinion on how I should attack this. Okay. So, Mark, what do we think about this? First of all, I think there's bigger questions right now, Ashton. So, one is so the 70 grand in cash, I presume that some of that you're keeping as an emergency reserve. If you are contributing 15% towards retirement, I'm wondering, is that number one, is it pre-tax? Is it post-tax? So are you putting in a Roth contribution or a pre-tax 401k that's a traditional 401k? And the other question I have is, does the 15% constitute 19,500? So those are a couple of bigger questions. Just put that to the side. Now, first of all, what about this annuity, Mark? What are we going to do with this? Because if Ashton pulls all the money out of the annuity at once, then there's going to be a big tax liability. So what do you think we should do with that annuity? Yeah, I mean, one question is, Mark makes a good point. If this annuity is a retirement annuity, if it's classified as it's an annuity that's inside of a retirement account, maybe it's a 403b or an IRA or a 401k, there may be an opportunity to preserve that. But again, because your father passed away this year, any money that is retirement money, you would have to take out within 10 years of his death. But if this is not that kind of an annuity, if this is an annuity that is called a non-qualified or a non-retirement annuity, then you've got some different questions to ask yourself, because that means that we have to start thinking about the best tax treatment for this. And, that may mean you have to start dribbling out the annuity a little bit every year. In terms of the house and investing, taking the proceeds and investing that money, I think that's an interesting question as well, because that might mean that you really need to build a financial plan. I would go through any of the websites, wherever you're going to be buying these index funds or exchange traded funds. I try to build a nice diversified portfolio. And we want to try to figure out, what is it you really want to do with this money? Do you want to actually purchase something yourself someday? Is that part of this money? Is this simply a supplemental retirement account or just a supplemental investment account? So there's a lot of questions to ask you. I'd love it if you could follow up with us. This is the kind of person who should come on the show, right, Mark? There's so many more things that I need to know about this. So this is what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest follow up with us. Let us know where you're thinking about investing with this big lump sum. And then let's talk about what you think the use of the money is going to be, when you're going to use it or for what purposes. And then I think we can help guide you a little bit better. I think that sort of covers it, right, Mark? Come on the air, Mark says. Come on down. It's a little Price is Right throwback. Okay. If you, like Ashton, have a question, then we'd love to hear from you. The email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com, and we will be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you have a question that's maybe keeping you up at night, maybe not even keeping you up at night, maybe it's causing some consternation between you and your spouse, maybe it is just something that's nagging at you a little bit, why don't you let us take that off of your shoulders? Send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com, askjill@jillonmoney.com. If you're on the website, if you're on the jillonmoney.com website, there's a contact button, and you can just send us your question from there. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, Jill on Money, or Eye on Money. You can get it on Apple or anywhere else you find your favorite podcast. So check that out. Before we finish up the hour, let's answer one more question here. This is from Chris, who says, "Hi, Jill. Our home is currently valued at $574,000, and the mortgage balance is $390,000. We have debt of $40,000, not including student loans, which are well over, wait for it, Mark, $200,000. I swear, I feel tightness in my chest when I read that. Kids are in college. At some point, we want to downsize. We're not opposed to moving somewhere else. My husband can work anywhere. He's remote. Should we sell the house, for the profit, pay off the debt, and rent until the housing market slows down, and then purchase a home? The house does need about 25 grand of improvements before we could sell. We value your opinion and look forward to hearing from you." Oh, boy. I'm worried about this situation. I need more of the data, and I'll tell you why. Where's the other money? You've got all these loans. Is there a retirement account? Is there some money that's somewhere else? What is the debt of $40,000? I am reluctant to tell you to sell this house. First of all, I don't know where you live, how much it would cost you to rent. If we're going to sell the house, chances are you're not buying anything for a while. And you're not even putting a big dent in the student loans. And when are house prices going to be lower? They might moderate, but I don't think they're going to drop down significantly. We need more information, and I don't think that this is necessarily the best decision in the short term. So can you follow up with us? This is the hour of me begging you to be on the show with us. Please, everyone, it's so much more fun. Come on the show with us. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Mark will do the rest. Just say, I want to come on the program. Because when we have you on the air, we can ask all these follow-up questions, and it's a better experience for everyone. Okay, that's the end of the first hour. Stay tuned. We've got a flamin' hot guest in next hour. You'll see what I mean. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And we love to bring you interesting guests. And when we booked this guest, we did not think we were booking a particularly controversial guest. But then, as it turns out, it was a little bit controversial. Let me tell you who this is. This is Richard Montañez, and he wrote a book that is called Flamin Hot: The Incredible True Story of One Man's Rise from Janitor to Top Executive. So he had this really wild career at Frito-Lay. And he says that he is the guy who helped create the Flamin Hot Cheeto. All right, so we booked a guest because we thought it'd be fun, like a fun summertime guest, right? And right before we book this, there's this huge Los Angeles Times story, like a gazillion word story, basically saying that he didn't really invent the snack product. Anyway, the long story about this is that there was some controversy about it. I wanted to make sure that we actually covered that controversy. So don't feel like that's not coming out of left field. We talked about it prior to going on the air. And I said, we want you to tell your story. We want you to talk about what's going on, but I've got to ask you about this. So that's why the beginning of this interview is asking that particular question. So we'll get through it pretty quickly. And then it is a cool story. I don't care whether he actually did it or didn't do it. The story of his life is amazing. So here's the first part of our interview with Richard Montañez. So you've got this amazing story. The Mexican-American rises up, rocks and rolls. The Flamin' Hot in the title of your memoir has to do with Flamin' Hot Cheetos. So we booked this interview, I don't know when, Mark, back in April-ish, and the book's coming out now in June. And in the interim, Richard, there was like this crazy-ass long LA Times story the headline was insanity to me, which is the man who didn't invent Flamin' Hot Cheetos. Why the LA Times come after you, and what's the deal with this story?
I'll never know why they wrote that story, so I have no idea. And my first reaction was confusion. I was like, what? I was just like, no, this can't be.
They're basically saying that you didn't invent the Flamin' Hot Cheetos. So what is the official PepsiCo response to that? And what's your response to that?
Well, my response to that is very, very simple. All I know is my story. All I know is my life. All I know is what I did. What somebody else did, I have no idea. When PepsiCo came out with their statement, they're like, okay, it made me feel a whole lot better. It was a few days of, ups and downs. And first thought was, after 42 years with PepsiCo as a great ambassador, what is this? And then once PepsiCo, began to share that there was, miscommunication or whatever it was, I really don't have any details. I stayed away from details. But when I saw the statement, like, okay, and then, people came up in my defense. As far as I was concerned, case closed and let's move on.
I mean, look, first of all, you can't control a lot of this stuff. I'd rather kind of talk to you because it is your story. So let's be clear that if you want to read all about this gang, you can just figure it out yourself. But we're talking to the man whose story is inspirational. By the way, frankly, it's inspirational whether you actually created this one product or not. So I have to be honest with you. For all intents and purposes, it could have never been created and it would still be an inspirational story. So let's start a little bit. First, where were you born?
I was born in a small town called Guasti, California. And the history in Guasti, California, it was built by a gentleman by the name of Segundo Guasti. He was an Italian immigrant. And he came down and saw that the land was perfect for grapes and wine. So he brought more Italians with them, and he built a little town. And then it grew so big, he needed labor. So that's when the Latinos come in. So it was a town of Italians and Latinos. And it was a very, very, maybe, and again, there's no history, and I'm just talking from my childhood. It might have been 2,000 people there. He built a little general store, very little. He built a church, a replica of his hometown. And he built buildings there. He built a big restaurant there. From my understanding, he was a very good man. Of course, he was way before my time, but those are the stories that my grandpa and my dad would tell me.
Tell us a little bit about your sort of entree into the work world. How did you get to Pepsi? What brought you there? And talk a little bit about your career and what happened.
To go all the way back, I was looking for jobs. So I worked at a car wash. And in between I had, wherever, temporary jobs, factory jobs. I've done everything. When I got the job at the car wash, one of my old friends, a young man, see me and he said, hey, I'm working at Frito-Lay. He goes, they're hiring. I said, what? They're hiring? He said, yeah. He goes, go apply. And I was just like, I was on a cloud. I thought for a moment, Frito-Lay, isn't that the chip company, the Lays and the Fritos? And I'm like, oh my God, just think if I could get a job at Frito-Lay. That's my big break. That's like, I've never had insurance in my life, and then, I'm starting a family. So like, okay, they have health benefits. They have, that's all I thought about was the health benefits. Like, wow, I could change the legacy for the Montanez family. And I know people would say, what are you talking? It's a factory. But I've always said, there's no such thing as just any job. When you believe in your heart, you're going to be the best. No such thing as just a janitor. So I went and I applied, and I actually, asked them if I could bring the application home. I was a terrible, I struggled with writing and spelling. I still do. I said sure, and took it home. And my wife, who has been my inspiration, my partner in everything. I don't know where I'd be if she wasn't around. She filled it out for me. Then I took it back. The HR man, well, they weren't called HR. I think they were called ER, Employee Relations.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it was a long time ago, during the 70s. So he looks at it, he stares at it, and then he looks up at me. And I'm getting nervous because it's like, I'm just thinking, what is on there that shouldn't be on there? It's like, so he looks at me and then he asks this question, did you fill this out? I said, yes. He looks at me again and goes, you have nice handwriting. And I just remember, I've been stealing Judy's credit ever since. So
Oh, that's awesome. And so was she working at the time? Were you both working or was she home with kids? What was going on?
she was working part-time. So, she was, wherever she could get, a part-time job, never full-time because she was always with the kids. Got the application and, he said, okay, can you start tonight? And I said, absolutely.
Okay, we'll get back to Richard Montañez in just a second. If you have an interesting story, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me more about your stories. I'd love that. It's Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are in the middle of a great interview with a guest. His name is Richard Montañez, and we were able to talk to him through the miracle of technology. Mark had figured out a great technological solution to getting people on the air, and it's been fantastic. And so now we have a virtual studio. In fact, we are broadcasting from the Sleep Number virtual studios. Sleep Number, smart, effortless, comfort. So let's get back to our interview with Richard Montañez. We're going to find out how he gets his first job at Frito-Lay. So you get this job. How do you start moving up in this massive organization?
Well, I think, first I need to, share with you how I shared with my dad and my grandpa. They were so happy for me because in those days it was a union job. So, everybody wanted a union job, right? And I remember my grandfather said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to mop the floors. And he said something to me that I teach this to young people, and I believe it's the reason I'm successful. He said, when you mop that floor, you make sure that it shines. When people see it, they know that a Montañez mopped it.
Oh, that's great.
And I took that on. I just started mopping the floors. And then I saw, as I was mopping the floor, I learned all my leadership through my trials and errors, through the streets, the places that I've been. It's not formal, but yet it doesn't mean it isn't right. It's just a different way, So I saw that I had an influence. And then, people say, how can you influence? You're just the janitor. And I had an influence without saying one word because my job was to clean the restroom. So I made that thing spotless and made it smell fresh. My job was to clean the break rooms. I did the same thing. My job was to clean all the offices before the managers came in the morning. So I saw that people were going in and like, wow, it smells so clean in there. Who did that? The new janitor. Hey, who cleaned the lunchroom? The new janitor. And the managers would come in. Hey, who cleaned my office? Hey, that new guy, Montanez. So I saw that, wow, I'm having an influence without even saying a word. I'm putting a smile on people's face without saying a word, just going by what my grandfather said. But then, I don't remember how long it was, but there's a probation period. My boss, I still remember his name. His first name was Jim. At the end of my probation, or 2 weeks before the end of my probation, he called me in and he said, I'm going to have to let you go. I was devastated.
Freaking out.
I was devastated. My final, my big break, and I blew it. And I begged him for another chance, and I said, well, what's the problem? I'm doing what I'm told. He goes, that's not the problem. You're doing what you're told. You just show no initiative. I didn't know what that meant, so I went home again to Judy, who's an intelligent person. I said, what does the word initiative mean? So she read it to me out of the dictionary, and I was stunned. Since that day, I think I've gone overboard. I think that's why I am the way I am. I never wanted anybody to ever tell me I showed no initiative. But see, here's what he meant, is I was doing such a good job that I was finishing, my duties in half the time because I wasn't messing around. So what I would do is I would start all over again. He goes, you do what I tell you to do, but when you finish and you have time, you don't do anything else. So I figured it out. So once I finished, my daily shift, whatever time I had left, I started helping other people. I started taking other people's trash out. I started going out into the floor. I started learning the equipment. Other managers were saying, hey, thanks for letting us use Richard.
Now it gets sort of like you sort of become, you're being spoken about.
Yes. And he's like, what do you mean? I didn't let Richard do anything. He goes, no, I know, but he helped Frank take out the trash, or he took Frank's trash out. And these guys were line operators. They were the pilots. I've gone to and done things that weren't my job, but that's who I am today is, I'm going to do something that you don't pay me to do. I started seeing these videos from PepsiCo because that was the communication, right? There was no email. It was just videos, and the videos were always inspiring. And it's Mr. Enrico talking about, the company's not doing too good. And he says, I need your help. We can't do it without you. So he goes, I'm giving you permission to act like an owner. And that just stunned me. Most people don't understand that, but, I grew up when corporate America was a command and control. I command, I control. I didn't hire you to think. I hired you to do what I tell you to do. So there was always that wall between supervisors and frontline workers. And here was Roger was trying to tear down that wall. And I was like, wow. I went home and I told Judy, hey, you saw this video. The new CEO said, act like an owner. And she said, well, then act like an owner. Next to the building was a sales office. And I went and I found me a salesperson. Just randomly walked up and I said, hey, can I go with you on my day off? I'll do all your work. I just want you to teach me the business, the job. And he looked at me like, heck yeah, you can come on your vacation if you want. Free labor? So he said, meet me at 5 o'clock in the morning. I got there at 5 on my first day off. He taught me how to pull an order. He taught me how to load the truck up so that we could, maximize our space. And then he taught me how to, run the route so that we could minimize our fuel. Then when we got to the store, he taught me how to merchandise the product. And then about the third store, there it was. And I always, I write in my book, and one of my favorite quotes of my own is that all you need is one revelation to create a revolution. So I was loading it up, and then I looked, and there it was. And I looked at him, and I realized he couldn't see it. And I understand now he couldn't see it because he was an expert. So I tell people, don't become such an expert that you can't see things anymore. So the question is, well, what did you see, Richard? Well, I saw the spice rack. I saw a bunch of spices. I saw chilies. I saw, people buying all this. And it was right there, like across from the Lay's rack. I said, there it is. And I looked at our product, and I'm just like, Lay's, Ruffles, and Fritos, and maybe sour cream. I'm looking all the way down. I'm like, there's nothing here for Latinos or in general, anybody who loves spices. Everybody loves spices. It's not just Latinos. So that was my first revelation. I remember I went home and I told Judy, hey, Judy, I got this idea. We're gonna take your salsa and put it on a chip. And she said, what chip? I'm like, I don't know. I really didn't know.
When you have an idea like that in an organization like Pepsi, Frito-Lay, was there an openness to an idea can come from anywhere? We've always heard that story of, the Post-it note came from somebody in a brainstorming session, or was it, what do you know, mister? How was it received when you came up with that idea?
It wasn't. Even in today's world, I think it's still difficult for people. But in those days, it was, stay in your own lane, mind your own business.
Right. How did you push it forward from there?
People knew that I was a hard worker and I was doing everything. So I had a few people on my side, managers, giving me the insights behind closed doors. Well, this time my wife's working at Target. She got a job at Target warehouse. So, we made up a few batches. I knew enough because of the plant of how to do it. She took some to her work and I took some, to my work and let people try them. And she came back and said, hey, everybody at Target loved them, on the break. And, we did that for a few days. They were telling her he needs to call the CEO. So she said, Richard, call the CEO. Yeah, make the phone call. His executive assistant, she answered the phone and, she knows everybody, doesn't recognize the name Richard Montañez. Where do you work? And I said, I work in California. And she's like, oh, okay, you run California? And I said, no, I work in Southern California. You run something? No, I work in the Rancho Cucamonga plant. And she's like, oh, you're the plant director? No. Are you the plant manager? No. What are you, guy? I'm on the line. I mop, I clean, she's like, oh, and I told her what had happened. And I even asked her, what do you think I should do? She said, you need to talk to Roger, and then I just said, hey, I saw your video and I came up with these flavors, and he says, okay, I'm going to come down there. And I remember I hung up the phone. I was like, wow, I can't believe it.
Okay, we'll get back to our interview with Richard Montañez in just a moment. If you have any kind of financial question, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're just starting out at a company, maybe like Richard did, maybe you'd like some advice, we'd love to hear from you. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. If you're on our website, jillonmoney.com, just click the contact button and we will get that note. Don't forget to tell us if you want to come on the air live with us. So easy to do. Mark does all the work. Okay, we'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And I want to get back into the end of our interview with Richard Montañez. His book is called Flamin Hot, The Incredible True Story of One Man's Rise from Janitor to Top Executive. Now, before we went to the break, we were about to hear the story about how he made this call to the big shot at the company, and what happens next sort of is the destiny of this man's career. So here is the conclusion of our interview with Richard Montañez.
Thing that happened immediately after the phone call, by the time the plant manager got it, he came up and, kind of laid into me and said, why'd you do that? Who do you think you are? And then he left and he said, you're doing the presentation. I'm thinking, I'm doing a presentation? I've never even done homework. So I go home and Judy could see that I'm really upset. And she goes, what's the matter? I go, I'm going to get fired. And she said, why? I said, because you told me to call the CEO and now I'm in trouble. She told me, calm down. It's not that bad. And as ridiculous it may sound, we went to the library and we checked out a book. Because remember, there's no Google. We checked out a book on how to develop a marketing strategy. We literally copied 3 paragraphs. Didn't know what they meant, but they sounded good. I said, I'll just go with this. We put them on transparencies.
So you made the presentation. It went well. Now, here's what I want to know. How did it feel to find out that Eva Longoria was interested in your story? How did that happen?
I met, my executive producer, which is the Reverend Sam Rodriguez, very influential person. And he introduced me to Devon Franklin, who he was a movie producer. He worked with Will Smith for like 20 years with Will Smith. So he knew the business in and out. He worked on some of the biggest movies ever. He arranged a meeting and Devon said, I've never seen anything like this. I was like, wow, okay. To my amazement, there was a bidding war for the rights. We met with everybody. We met with MGM, Paramount, Netflix. When it came down to, who do I pick? 'Cause it's my story. And I signed with Fox, and there was other people that outbidded Fox. But again, it was never about the money. I wasn't trying to get rich. I know how to work. So I went with Fox Searchlight because I love how big they were on diversity. Some of the other ones that won't matter, they just saw a great story, but this company, they got it. We became like family. This is who I'm going to go with. I signed with them, and then when it came down to look for a director, Eva's name pops in, and she gave a presentation that just blew everybody away.
Really?
Oh my God. Me and my wife were just in chills. She is I mean, you see her as an actress and an advocate. That day I saw her as a CEO, a chief marketing officer, the top of the top. And what was crazy, she had the same visions that I had. That's when I knew this has to be done by her. It's her first one, but she has the vision. It's about the stories. It's not even really about a hot Cheetos. It's about, overcoming obstacles,
No,
overcoming
it's a biography. It's like it is a celebration of your life and where you came from. And it's we started this interview and you said, all I know is my story and my life. And you found the person who can take your story and put it on film and do it justice. So, I mean, I think it's amazing. I am very much looking forward to seeing what that depiction looks like. You are inspiring, encouraging, and you remind us all that, you know what? Yeah, the little guy can rise up too. It is kind of cool, when you think about somebody who started his career and basically with this idea, I'm going to be like the best guy who mops the floors. I'm going to be the best, janitor I can be. I also loved when he talked about, this idea that having a union job with benefits was so huge, and how he basically says, like, taking this job could change the legacy of my family. I think it's kind of neat. And I think that the lessons that he provides are really great. And I think for anyone who has heard the struggles of people who start at the bottom and how they rise up, it's inspiring. Now, Mark, you may not know this, but you know that my grandfather, he was I think he worked in the stockroom of a department store in New York City. He started at the bottom. 47 years later, he became the CEO, or he retired as the CEO. Those stories do still happen. I think they're harder to come by, don't you? I don't know. The rising up through the ranks stories. It does feel like the old school way. You're right. Anyway, if you're trying to rise up the ranks, if you're thinking about new careers, if you're just contemplating what's going on in your own financial life, we sure would love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. askjill@jillonmoney.com. And if you're on our website, if you're on the jillonmoney.com website, all you need to do is click the contact button. And don't forget to tell us if you want to come on the air with us, because we can get you on the air right here at the Sleep Number Virtual Studios. It's very easy. And I think that for a lot of people, as you're thinking about the questions that are percolating, let me put a few in front of you. For example, were you able to do a little rebalancing in your portfolio? Did you actually take that opportunity? Did you say, half the year's over, should I be rebalancing? If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you actually need to give us a holler. Rebalancing just means you have an asset allocation and you want to keep it in line. These are all questions that we can help answer for you. So again, send us your question, askjill@jillonmoney.com, or click the contact button on the jillonmoney.com website, and we will help you out. That's our job. Okay, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And we can do that by having you ask us your questions. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Okay, so by the way, this is so funny. I was on vacation. You know, you think you're always on vacation, but then you run into people who are like, oh, I just had a quick financial question. So my neighbor asked me this question. You ready, Mark? You ready to answer the question for the neighbor? I'm not allowed to out the neighbor. I'm just allowed to call him M. Okay. So M says to me, my broker at blank blank investment house that you've all heard of just sent me a note and is raising the fees for the management of my accounts. I said, well, how much is he charging you? He's charging me 1%. It's going to 1.25%. How much money does he manage? $1.5 million. And I said, well, what are you getting for that extra 0.25%? He goes, I don't know. He's always just, like he manages the money, just does it. Is there any financial planning? No, never. He never had a financial plan, Mark. Ever, ever, ever. I said, okay. I said, do you want to make some really easy money? I said, you can just do this yourself. I don't want to do it myself. So I said, you should actually contact the sponsor of my radio show, Facet Wealth. Just go to facetwealth.com. I read the commercial to him in the middle of the street. He goes, what is it? I said, well, they do financial planning, which is kind of good because he actually had some financial planning questions. And they do it for a flat fee. And there are no conflicts because they're certified financial planners and they are fiduciaries. They're acting in your best interest. And they do goal-based financial planning. And you're not going to get a call center person. You're going to get the same person every time. And he says, well, a lot of those financial planning firms, they have minimums of $2 million. I said, nope, not at Facet. That's it. And anyway, he's checking it out. And I think he's got an appointment with a Facet advisor. So I feel very proud for having given him that. He did say that it looks like that he'll be able to save thousands of dollars a year by doing that. So not a bad story. We'll see if he actually, does it. But check it out, gang. Facetwealth.com. May be able to save you some money. Okay. Matt in Las Vegas says, love the podcast. Thanks for the great info you put out. On one of the recent shows, a caller had a 2.85% interest rate after refi. And without him mentioning it, you said, don't ever make an extra payment. That's because the rate is so low. And now Matt goes on to say, my wife and I purchased our home at the end of October last year. We owe $503,000, 2.5%, 30-year loan. Oh my God. So he says, my original plan was to make one extra payment a year of $2,500. I'm 49, wife is 45. I wanted to lessen the principal that's left whenever I retire. But after your podcast, I was playing around with an amortization calculator for my loan. And if I pay an extra $2,500 versus investing $2,500 a year for 30 years, earning 4%, the difference is substantial. Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's so great. Thank goodness. I love this question. I mean, by the way, how about Matt going to the amortization calculators? What do you think? Not bad. And he's only using a 4% return, which is not a fabulous return. That's just kind of a no-brainer return. I mean, wait until you run it at 5%. Don't do it by more than 5. But anyway, here's a question. Ready? Where should I put the extra $2,500 a year to earn a safe return? I have a 401k with Vanguard. 99% of my retirement is there. And also a Robinhood and a Coinbase account. Both are sort of play money accounts. Thanks again for everything. Okay, so why not just open up you could do this in your Robinhood account. Why don't you just throw 2 ETFs in there and just say a S&P 500 ETF and an intermediate term bond ETF? Or just even, frankly, you could just do an index fund at Vanguard. Maybe you want to just open a Vanguard account and put the $2,500 a year in there. I mean, it depends how much you want to separate things out, but all you need to do is just have a balanced account. That's it. And it does not need to be a really involved type of portfolio. This is a super boring account, right? If you think it's easier to keep things separate, that's fine with me. But gang, if you have a really cheap mortgage and you can be disciplined and put that money away instead of paying that extra payment and put that money into a long-term investment account, heck, you are going to be better off for doing that. Also, it's a nice way to build up liquidity. You just have an extra account with some money in it. I love this. First of all, Mark, are you jealous of the 2.5% 30-year fixed rate mortgage? 30 years for 2.5%. I know I'm kind of jealous too. But therein lies the timing issue. You know, he didn't try to do it. They just did it. So it was very smart. If you have a mortgage question like that, if you are inclined to be the kind of person who wants to be mortgage or debt free, I understand that. That is a pull that every one of us has. However, I'd like to encourage you to be like Matt and at least to consider what your alternatives are. Now, listen, if you're going to take the $2,500 a year and just blow it, then sure, pay down the mortgage. And maybe if you have a ton of money and you just don't like the idea of debt, then sure, just blow it. You know, there are definitely people who can make the choice to do that. But if you don't have to, that's fine. Okay, it's Jill on Money. When we return, we're going to conclude the show, and it's going to be great. A great, fabulous end to the program. Hang in there. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we're at the end of the program, but still one more question left to go. If you have a financial question, we are always happy to chat with you. All you need to do is send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com, or if you're on our website, if you're on the jillonmoney.com website, all you need to do is click the contact button. The subject of this from Joe is 401k ideas. And Joe writes, I'm 57 and I've just passed $500,000 in my 401k account. Wow, that's amazing. It's pretty much all the savings that my wife and I have. My fear is there is a good chance of losing much of that due to market volatility before I am 59 and a half. I don't know about that, but anyway, I was recently contacted by a quote unquote advisor who mentioned there are things I can do in all caps now to protect my savings and even avoid tax penalties. My question is, what would you recommend I do now to avoid major losses? Joe, listen, I'm going to tell you right now that this is a salesperson, and maybe there are some things you can do, but I'm guessing that this salesperson is going to say, oh, the way you can do that is to buy my annuity. And I don't want you to do that. What I want you to do is to follow up and tell me exactly how this money is invested. And I also want to understand why 59 and a half is your magic moment. Are you retiring at 59 and a half? Do you have enough money to retire? Have you done all of the planning work necessary to help you conclude that that's the right thing for you? I'm not so sure. So I'd love for you to follow up with us. Mark, am I getting boring just asking for people to give us more and more information? I mean, I feel like I'm a little greedy today. We once had a guest on who we thought was an expert about something, and he kept saying, well, no, just call the IRS and ask them that. We would love to help you. We do need more information. So if you need help like that, send us your emails, askjill@jillonmoney.com. Tell us whether you'd be willing to come on the program. Mark is so great. He does all the work. We'll bring you on. Okay. It's the end of the show. That means I tell you all the good stuff, that our music is composed by Joel Goodman, that Mark Talercio is our executive producer, and that you can subscribe to our sister broadcast, Jill on Money and Eye on Money, right from our website at jillonmoney.com, or you can just go to wherever you get podcasts, Apple or Google or Stitcher or Spotify, whatever, wherever you find your favorite podcast, Odyssey. Check it out. And please do me a favor. Lift someone up today. It will make that person feel better, and it will make you feel better. Thank you so much for listening. We are nothing without you guys. Thanks for sending us all your questions, and we'll talk to you next week.